Hello, everyone, and welcome to Women of Grace. I'm Janet Williams. Our guest today is a prolific author who's written dozens of books for children to help them experience and live the abundant life of Jesus Christ. Today, we'll discover why children's literature, and particularly Catholic children's literature, helps to form and encourage little ones in the way we want them to go and to grow. Today is part one of Faith and Fiction, Teaching Children Through Literature.
We are women of grace round the throne of the Lord Most High. And we lift up our praise from the depths of our souls. Hear our cry. O Lamb of God, it is our one desire to seek your holy face, women of grace.
I'm guessing that most of us remember the storybooks read to us when we were children. Parents, teachers, grandparents, and perhaps babysitters took us to imaginary places filled with amazing characters performing admirable deeds. Vicariously, we imagined ourselves to be those heroes and heroines, experiencing within ourselves their successes and triumphs, disappointments and misgivings, problems and solutions. Though engaging and entertaining, much more is going on cognitively and formatively than simply a few pleasant moments with a child. Today, we'll talk with Katie Warner, a prolific Catholic author whose books for children help them grow and flourish in the Catholic faith. Her many books are available for you at EWTN's Religious Catalog, and I'm encouraging you, just go to EWTNRC.com to order. Now, let's welcome Katie Warner. Katie, welcome to Women of Grace.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Jeanette. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to have you. And I just want to show everybody. I am sitting here, friends, with a stack. Literally, look, here's the spines. A stack of books. And this is only scratching the surface of the books that Katie has written and that are available for you. And they cover just a wide range of topic areas. I'll read just a few titles, Katie, just so they get an idea of really how prolific an author you are. This is Sister Claire Gets Ready for Prayer. I have to say this is one of my favorites. It's about cloistered Dominican sisters. I was taught by Dominicans in high school. A great aunt was a Dominican sister. And so even as an adult, I was vicariously entering into this children's book. Look at this, Listening for God, Silence Practice for Little Ones. This is wonderful. It's teaching children really how to meditate, how to go deeply, actually how to contemplate. Wonderful book. This is another one on a saint, Benedict and the Rule, and it really kind of tells us a little biographical information about Saint Benedict and incorporates into it some of his actual rules. Look at this. This was darling. I love this one too. Don't ask me my favorite because I'm going to say all of them. Lily Lolette, Future Saint. This is adorable, and I like this one for a very particular reason, Katie. I like to rhyme, and this is a rhyming book. So there we go. And this is also one of my favorites. I have 6 grandsons. I've told the Lord, I would love to have at least, you know, a third of them be priests. I'll take a half if you're willing. And this is big. Jack Giorgio, Future Priest. I'm going through all of them now. I didn't intend to, but they're so good. Look at this. This cover is glorious. And this is One Holy Marriage, and it's the story of Saints Louis and Zélie Martin. And who are they? They are the parents of Saint Therese of Lisieux and her other sisters. Her sisters are 4 sisters, all of whom entered religious life. And the youngest is also, you know, going through the canonization process. She's a servant of God right now. Is that Leonie, right?
Leonie, yes.
Leonie, yes. And then this one. You've got to get this one because it's Christmas every day when we know the Lord, right? And this is My True Love Gave to Me. And this is a catechism for the 12 days of Christmas. The illustrations, Katie, remarkable.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
What you contain in here is beautiful. So that exhausts what I have on my lap, but it certainly doesn't exhaust what's available for you at EWTN's Religious Catalog. So I want to talk about you. I want to talk about how it is that you discovered this really beautiful, I don't even really want to call it a talent, but it's a charism for writing children's literature that helps them to know Jesus, to know the saints, to know our Blessed Mother, but to grow in their faith.
You know, Jeanette, I would say it was motherhood. I had my first son, and we started reading picture books together all the time. And we were constantly checking out books from the library and just more and more and more literature all the time, reading hundreds of books a year. And I just started to fall in love with picture books. And as time went on, I had a dear friend who she and I were in graduate school together at the Augustine Institute studying theology, and simultaneously she was also in art school. And so she would bring her latest drawings and illustrations into theology class and show me before class started what she was working on, and I absolutely loved her artwork. And so years later, the Lord happened to place both of us in Florida at the same time. And so after we lived in Colorado together, we're now in Florida together, and we have our children playing on her playroom floor, and we just talked about how wonderful it would be to bring solid catechesis along with fun and whimsy and pleasure to Catholic children's literature. And she has a very phlegmatic personality, so she had already been doing so many drawings for friends and relatives, and I said, I want to make your artwork more available to the public. I want everyone to see your beautiful Catholic artwork. And then God was kind of slowly growing this seed in my own heart to write the books that she would illustrate. And so we started with a very simple picture book called I Went to Mass, What Did I See?, which is basically like a brown bear, but with all the different sights and sounds that you see when you go to Holy Mass, and with some board books for toddlers and babies. And then that just eventually grew into First Faith Treasury Books. And we just thank God all the time that, what a privilege it is that the Lord and Creator of the universe would give us as parents and grandparents and godparents and teachers, would entrust us with the care of his little ones, what St. Matthew tells us are the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and to be able to evangelize them through something as delightful as a good children's book. And so we've just had such a blessing it's been such a blessing for us to make these children's books for our own kids, and then to watch them spread around the world so that parents have these wonderful ways to introduce all of the goodness and truth and beauty of our Catholic faith to their children through something as delightful as a children's book.
Yes, well, they are absolutely beautiful. The writing is beautiful. That's your contribution. The illustrations are beautiful. You have a number of different illustrators, though. You're published through TAN, so I want you all to know that. You can really trust what is in these books. They are really opening children's hearts and minds to so many things. And you talk about the first one that you wrote on the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass. How wonderful is that to help a child appreciate it more deeply. But you also do these biographies. As I mentioned, you've got St. Benedict here. You also strive to help children understand that there are vocational choices that can be made. Do you want to be a mommy? You have books like that. Do you want to be a daddy? Is God calling you to be a spiritual mother through religious life, or a spiritual father through priesthood or religious life? And you open up that vista to them, and you make it interactive. That's what I liked about Sister Claire Goes to Prayer, because it's interactive. You actually have them take their little fingers. Now, use your fingers and walk down the path, to go. I think they were going to prayer in that particular section. And so I'm sitting there, I'm not a child, walking down the path with Sister Claire. But this is what education is. Education is the whole person. And I had shared with you that I taught literature numbers of years ago to high schoolers. And we know very well that the more of the senses that you involve in an experience, the more, not only is that experience available to the child emotionally and psychologically, but it also very formatively begins to embed certain principles, which is why children's literature is so important, because these little minds, they're just like, they're like Play-Doh, right? They're going to absorb, and they can be twisted and shaped in all kinds of, deleterious ways, or just shaped and formed into glorious ways.
That's such a beautiful way to put it, Janet, because a good children's book isn't just a book, it's an experience. And that's one of the things that we wanted to bring to all of our children's books. It's this beautiful combination of the audible and the visual and the tactile components, especially as you mentioned with these interactive books where the children can really be a part of the story using their fingers. When my kids bring me a picture book, they're not just wanting to hear a story, but they're also wanting to have amazing discussions based on that story. They're wanting to cuddle with me and bond with me. They're wanting to create these lasting memories and experiences based off of the stories that they read in the book. And I also like to remind my children that, God is telling a story with the world. History is his story. And so you are a part of that story. And so one thing that children's books can do is they can learn about some of the characters in God's story, especially in the case of, as you mentioned, these saint biographies, whether it's St. Louis and Zélie or St. Benedict, or even fictional characters as they try to find their way into God's story for them in the world, that you can learn from these characters and really know a good story by its fruits. Are the books you're reading to your children inspiring in them virtue, helping them to grow in faith, helping them aspire to be the saints God made them to be? If that's the case, then you know you have a good book in your lap, and you know that you have something that you can really treasure with your children over and over again, to open this window, to plant the seeds of faith and of goodness and truth and beauty and virtue that as they're little will take root and then grow over time, in the home.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely true, and I know that you're a homeschooling mom.
Yes.
And so as a result of that, you're always looking for the educational experience as well as the value of what they're going to get within the content of the book. And by that I mean, I love the fact that you say, well, you can talk with them about it. It's not just read this book, put it over here, and pick up another one and start reading again. You want for that book to open up their mind to perhaps a new idea, a new concept, and more than that, you want your little ones to begin to think, to be deep thinkers, right? To consider, to even analyze, and then to draw from that, certain conclusions. So you're helping them to really develop cognitively these abilities, the logical thinking, critical thinking, which is, terribly
a deficit in our culture. Yes.
It's like, well, what do you think about this? Well, I feel, no, I didn't ask about your feelings. What do you think about it? Wow, and it's this perplexed look, like, what does it mean to think?
Right.
We want to teach our children to understand, but to be able to, again, analyze and conclude.
Right. One of the things that we wanted to do with our children's books is to not water anything down, because our children have such a great capacity for knowing God and His truths. No surprise, because God put that capacity on their hearts.
Yes.
And so we want to raise things up. They can meet a very high bar, right?
Yeah.
And when we go through these children's books with them, some of the things that I learn from my own children's books come through my children. Drawing out these hidden gems of goodness, truth, and beauty in the stories that they read. And so we'll have these amazing discussions. Our recent book, Benedict and the Rule, that's our newest release. And you can talk with your children about so many things that are kind of sprinkled throughout the book in implicit ways. This idea of discomfort versus comfort. That book opens up with St. Benedict sitting at a table with a quill pen that says Benedict was a little uncomfortable. And you go on to discover that St. Benedict is living a very comfortable life. He's part of the nobility. He's in his studies, and things seem to be going very well for St. Benedict, and somehow he feels like he was made for more. He was made to do the work of God. And so what a beautiful opportunity to discuss with your children that in this world full of comforts, maybe you're made for something beyond comfort.
Yes.
Maybe sometimes you're made for discomfort, and that discomfort can lead to greatness.
That's right, and even the fact that material goods do not bring you happiness.
Right.
Material goods do not make you satisfied, right? That there's a longing in our heart for the greatness that you're discussing there. There's a longing for the only one that can fill it, and that's God. And discussing those kinds of things with them. The other thing that I notice in your books, and this is wonderful, friends, is that you don't talk down to the children. We have to meet them where they are.
Yes.
In their development, their cognitive development, psychological development, their emotional development, but we always want to challenge them a little bit. So, I appreciate your vocabulary. Being an English teacher, I love vocabulary. I love words. I love big words. I love, multi-syllabled words.
Yes.
And you do that for them. And so that might provoke a child to say, Mommy, what does that mean?
Right.
Right? And then you can say the word together.
Right.
And then you can say, can you make a sentence using that word? And you're really kind of helping that child's mind to expand and to grow. It's just so lovely.
A good children's book will spark the imaginations of readers of all ages.
That's right.
So I'm always hesitant when the publisher comes to me, so what ages is this for? I'm like, oh, don't make me do that, you know?
Yes.
Because a good picture book is for all ages. Even adults, right, can find something
Clearly.
beautiful in the pages of a good picture book. And
That's
so
right.
I'll sometimes put a lower end range, like how about 3 and up? They've always learned that. Now I'll just say and up at the end. Because there's really so many lessons that we
right.
can take. My kids laugh at me because when I open up One Holy Marriage and read it to them, my 5-year-old right now wants me to read that every day. So we've been reading One Holy Marriage every day. And they all tease me because I still tear up every time I read it. There's several instances in the book where they remember their vows, and the vows are explicitly written out. And I always tear up when I get to that part, and the part where, you know, Saint Zélie's on her deathbed, and they're, Mom, why are you crying? You wrote this book. And I said, well, it's not my story. You know, it's not my story. It's the story of these beautiful saints who have so much to teach us, and we can see in their lives, and even in the life of Saint Benedict, even though his life was full of the supernatural and so many miracles, there was a daily ordinariness about his life that even we can relate to.
Yes.
He practiced these basic monastic virtues
Yes.
of humility and silence and obedience that we can even practice in our own day-to-day lives and that are relevant for our children even today.
Well, and I want to say, now where do I have St. Benedict? Let me find him. Here he is. What is so lovely about this, you know, and you're talking about his rule, you know,
Right.
the rule of St. Benedict. But at the very end of the book, one of the things that Katie does that I think is really brilliant is you tell us to write our own rule. And, you know, and I have to say that you've always got something in here for the parents, right, that is an appeal to them.
Yes.
So you're educating the parents as well, right? And it says, you say this, a rule, R-U-L-E, helps us to carry out our true mission. Like Benedict, we were not made for comfort, but for the work of God. Your rule will be unique and might change over time. But here are some questions and ideas to get you started. So then on the facing page, we've got some questions to get you started. And I have to admit, you know, when we're sitting here on the set today, Lent is on our horizon,
Yes.
right? By the time this airs, I think that we'll probably be pretty well into Lent.
Right.
But that being said, I thought, wow, you know, this is a really marvelous thing to review for Lent.
Yes.
You know, what can we do? How do I check out on these things? You know, what can I put in place? So I thought, this is really brilliant. You should put this on a little card for Lent and pass it out. That being said, we have to go to a break. More to come on the other side of the break with our guest today, Katie Warner, a prolific author of children's books, but as she's sharing with us, and I think my own experience would testify to, they're not just for children. They're available for you at EWTN's Religious Catalog. I was just talking with you, and this is the latest release, Benedict and the Rule. They are absolutely beautifully written, absolutely beautifully illustrated. You yourself will get caught up. And this is the one I've got a question for you. Don't let me forget it when we come back. On One Holy Marriage, the story of Saints Louis and Zélie Martin. Look at that. Look at that cover. Don't you just want it in your house? I do. So we invite you to get a copy of it. Just go out to EWTN's Religious Catalog, EWTNRC.com. You could have a whole library of Katie Warner books. You will not regret it. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back, friends. We're visiting with our guest today, Katie Warner. And I'll tell you, she is a prolific Catholic author. She writes children's books. They are beautifully written, beautifully illustrated, wonderfully executed by TAN Publishing. We have them for you at EWTN's Religious Catalog. And I'll tell you, if you're a mom, a dad, a grandparent, a teacher, if you're a child, if you're a teenager, if you're a young adult, if you're anybody at all, you're going to want to have these books. They're beautiful. And I'm going to hold this one up just because, you know, I just love the Martins and I love St. Therese, and who doesn't? And this is about their marriage, One Holy Marriage. And they were the first canonized couple. They were canonized together. And what a brilliant stroke, especially at a day and time when so much, what I want to say, efforts on the part of the culture to really tear apart the delicate fiber of the institution of marriage. But I wanted to ask you, and you told us about your little guy, and this is his favorite book. and he wants this read over and over again. And I want to know, what is it that fascinates him so much about it? Does he tell you?
I did ask him the other day.
Did you?
I said, why One Holy Marriage? Because last year he had a fixation on Jack Giorgio, future priest, which makes sense because his name's Jack. and he also, that book has a superhero theme and just this great boyish feel. But now my little 5-year-old boy is really into One Holy Marriage. And I asked him the other day, what is it that you love about this book? And he just looked at me and very simply said, it's about marriage. And it was just the simplicity of his answer was so striking to me, because I thought, how beautiful that my 5-year-old son loves to just enjoy the goodness of marriage. And it reminded me that really one of the best things we can do for our children as married people is to show our children the example of good, holy, happy marriages. Yes. Like you said, in a culture that's just trying to tear marriage apart, let's show them the goodness of what marriage can be.
Yes.
And one of the things that Celine, one of the daughters of St. Louis and Zélie, said was that in her parents, you didn't find anything particularly extraordinary, right? And by that she means you didn't find any, grand miracles or levitation or preaching that evangelize the masses. But what you do find in the Martins are a husband and father who prayed fiercely for and sacrificed for his children, and a mother who was always looking for small ways to put others before herself and just continuously give her fiat to Christ in all of the mundane moments of her daily life. So you see this ordinary couple who teach us the extraordinary faithfulness that we can have in our vocation as married people, that have so much inspiration within our own homes, that all of their children entered into religious life.
Yes.
And how beautiful is that? Because you have St. Louis, who actually wanted to be a monk,
yes.
St. Zélie, who wanted to be a nun, right? And God had a different plan for them.
That's
He
right.
wanted them to get married.
Yeah.
And then all of their children end up entering into religious life because they were willing to follow God's plan and God's adventure wherever it leads them.
Yes.
And so that's another one of these, conversations that we can have with our children is, God has a plan for your life, and being able to learn about the saints is one of the great ways to uncover God's plan for you. And there's another book that you showed earlier called Lily Lolek, Future Saint. And as you
Yes.
mentioned, that
That's
one
so
has
cute. I'll
just
hold this up
adorable
again. There
illustrations.
you
That one
go.
has a special place in my heart. And Lily in the story has this kind of conundrum where she realizes she's not as brave as Saint Joan of Arc, and she's not as smart as Saint Thomas Aquinas, right? And so where's her place in God's plan? And the whole point of the story is that she discovers that God has a unique plan for her life, because she was created uniquely and wonderfully. And so what an important message for children and for us, that we have a special place in God's story, and that if we keep giving our yes to the Lord in all of those little ways, and as St. Therese teaches us, and as St. Zélie, her mother, teaches us, if we're used to saying yes to God in all of those little moments, it opens our hearts and prepares us to say the big yeses to God when He asks something big of us.
Yes, that's so very, very true. And one of the other features in that book that I so admired was the fact that you have the family inviting the parish priest to dinner, right?
Yes.
So that the incorporation of getting to know a priest as a human person, it opens up the possibility that perhaps God is calling you to the priesthood if you're a little boy.
Right.
And it's the priest who actually talks with her in the book about, you were created by God for a special and unique purpose, and He doesn't need another one of these saints because He has those already.
Yes.
He needs you. Right,
right.
Because He doesn't have another one of you in heaven,
Exactly.
So what a beautiful, beautiful gift that is for children. And also, too, I think an encouragement to parents to bring the priest into the home, right? To bring religious sisters in, if you have that opportunity, to the home, to introduce your children so that they get to have a real experience of that vocation in a way outside of a very formal setting.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Janet, because one of the things that we really like to do in our children's books is help children learn about and foster their own vocations. And one of the easiest ways we can do this is through relationships, by inviting the parish priest over for dinner, by getting to know sisters at our local religious order or school, by taking even, let's say, you feel like there aren't enough religious, in your area, take a pilgrimage to a monastery monastery so that your children can pray
Yes.
alongside monks and nuns who've given their life to
Yes.
Christ. Those relationships are so important. In addition to helping foster vocations through those relationships, we should also make prayer a central focus in helping our children foster their own vocations. They can pray for their own future vocation as a part of family prayer. They can be praying for an increase in vocations in general. And then one of the things that I like to remind myself, there's a famous adage of St. Ambrose. St. Monica had come to him kind of imploring him to argue with St. Augustine about his faith practice or lack
Yes.
thereof, right? And St. Ambrose once famously told St. Monica, you need to talk to Augustine less about God and talk to God more about Augustine, right? And so that's a good reminder for me too, as a parent or for grandparents or teachers or those who love our children, to always be praying for their vocations on our own too, to make that a
Yes.
regular intention in our own prayers.
Yes.
So in addition to, fostering these relationships, making prayer a central part of preparing them for their vocation, put a good children's book in their lap. And what a beautiful way to introduce them
Well,
to the marriage and holy orders and things like that.
I oftentimes hear from parents, Katie, whose children reach a certain age and begin to fall away from the church, right? And the parents, of course, are lamenting and crying and begging God, etc. And I always remind them of Proverbs. It says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And I highlight when he is old. It doesn't say he won't depart from it,
Yes.
but when he is old, he will not depart from it. He'll come back. And so this is very formative in helping our children. We put those seeds in, they'll take root, and
Yes.
eventually they will bear great fruit. Well, we're at the end of this program, but good news, friends. Katie's going to be back with us again tomorrow. We'll continue our discussion about writing children's literature. And tomorrow, I'd like to get into some of the mechanics of that. I'd like to get into Katie Warner's creative process. So she's going to be with us tomorrow. If you have any kind of sense that you want to write a children's book, I want to tell you tomorrow is the thing to watch. So we're inviting you to get out to EWTN's religious catalog. All of Katie's books are there, EWTNRC.com. God bless you. Bye.